Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, because there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, today's bombing in Brussels, Belgium proves that the Islamo-fascists are more determined than ever to destroy our Western culture and way of life. We must clearly identify who our enemy is and take a firm stance against them. Yet Obama hasn't even been in the nation to address this. No, right now he's too busy playing baseball, or rather watching baseball, with his communist brothers from another mother's. And that's a bit of a problem itself. We didn't want to, reestablish relations with Cuba. We haven't done anything that would, show that they've earned it. They haven't done anything to show that they've earned it. And that's a major problem, because it goes against everything that we stand for as a nation and a people. And what we have to do is stay firm with our enemies. We have to let our enemies know who they are. But the problem is we face this dilemma of the cancerous doctrine of political correctness. It's threatening to strangle the life out of our country. And, it goes back to 9/11, when George W. Bush referred to Islam as the religion of peace. And that's something we'll get into a little bit later in the program. But I want to focus on this issue of terrorism. When you look at the 21st century, which we're in the second decade of it now, is it going to be defined by terrorism? They say that every era has some defining moment that characterizes exactly what that era is and what dominates that era. The question is, will terrorism be this era's dominating and defining factor? And does that mean that we must sacrifice our liberty in order to stay secure?
Well, here's the thing. In fighting terrorism, you pose the question that, is it possible to fight Islamofascism without sacrificing our constitutional rights? Well, the answer is yes, for the simple reason that if our rights are violated or sacrificed or infringed in any way, it prohibits us from being able to act accordingly to defend ourselves, our homeland, our freedom, so on and so forth. So the only way that we can truly fight Islamofascism is if the reins that would infringe upon our rights are removed. The shackles are gone. We have to have full support of each other, and we the people, the sovereign citizens, the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. And the government needs to stay the hell out of the way. Leave our rights and freedoms alone. Let us maintain what we need to maintain.
Sure. And, that's part of the problem that we've had, even going back to President George W. Bush's response to the war on terror. You see, even in that name, the war on terror, that would be as if we go back to World War II and call it a war on blitzkrieg or a war on kamikaze attacks. It doesn't work. It needs to be addressed towards the real enemy. And, that has always been the shortcoming of this cancerous doctrine of political correctness. It's a form of paralysis that prevents us from taking the steps that are necessary to ensure that our nation is safe, while also preserving our fundamental and unalienable rights. Think back to the almost prophetic words of Benjamin Franklin, when he said that those who give up essential liberties for a fleeting sense of security deserve neither liberty nor security, and shall surely have neither. That states the true dichotomy, or the true balancing act that has to be done. And I think that if we give in to where we sacrifice our constitutional rights and liberties in order to gain some sort of false or fleeting sense of security, it allows these Islamofascists to win. Because what are they doing? They are out to destroy our Western civilization, our way of life, our philosophy. Why? Because they embrace this barbaric, medieval, backwards way of thinking, which is truly detrimental for any liberty-loving place or any Western ideology. And again, once again, the doctrine of political correctness works against us here. It is a hindrance to us, and it promotes these savages who want nothing short than our complete and utter annihilation. And it's as though the West is attempting to sign a suicide pact by doubling down on this ridiculous notion of political correctness and revisionist history.
Well, one of these, key instances of what Benjamin Franklin warned about comes with the TSA. Now, our listeners know that, or they, should kind of be let in on the inside joke here. We are the Wright Flyer, radio aviation excellence, so on and so forth. So, of course, we're going to take every jab at the TSA that we can. Why? Because, well, we've declared war on political correctness, and we don't care if they like it or not. So with the TSA, that is a prime example of people sacrificing their freedoms and liberties for a modicum of safety and security. Did it stop and prevent terrorist attacks? Maybe to a small degree. But it could be argued that we, the people, being able to defend ourselves and protect ourselves instead of some governmental agency stepping in and trying to do it for us, it could have had and probably would have had the same effect. In fact, it probably would have had an even better effect. Remember the underwear bomber and the shoe bomber on the flights? Did the TSA stop them? No.
Well, in fact, what was it? Just last year where they got the gun through?
Yeah.
And so, about 50% of the times of the tests, the TSA failed. And, Jeremy, it leads to another thing. What is it about banning liquids from going on the plane that's going to stop anything? Or stopping and frisking and harassing grandma? I mean, when you say that you can't... Yeah. Or the Korean foreign exchange student several months ago. Yeah. When you stop and think about it, this sort of stuff in the name of political correctness is asinine. It doesn't protect anyone. And then when they say that we can't do any type of profiling, of course, then the Mohammeds will get on.
Well, and that goes right again into, this whole issue of stopping Islamofascism and terrorism and combating it. Political correctness has become a shackle for people. You can't speak out, like you said, you can't profile individuals. Well, here's the thing, folks. Profiling is not illegal. If it was, the FBI wouldn't exist because that is their sole job, is to profile. So it's okay for the government. It's okay for them to have agencies and whatnot to profile people, but yet we, the people, the individual sovereign wielders of authority, nope, you can't do it because it's politically incorrect. Well, guess what? Farouk, I don't care. I'm going to do it anyways.
Right. And then with President Obama, if we can even call him president, being over in Cuba, sipping on some mojitos with the Kami brothers as they watch a baseball game over there, that's not leadership. He should be here. He should be addressing the issue here. And instead, he's addressing the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media from Cuba. Mm-hmm. What? So he's going to speak out about fighting terrorism from one of the old world terrorists, being Cuba. Remember, they engaged in spreading their revolutionary ideology all throughout Latin America. That's why Che Guevara was killed in Bolivia. It was because he was in Bolivia trying to spread the communist revolution. And of course, that goes hand in hand with the doctrine of Marxism. And don't think that the Fabian socialists are any less of a revolutionary ideology. They are revolutionary in nature. But as their original iconography, dating back to the 19th century, goes, they are a bunch of wolves in sheep's clothing. They want to be able to infiltrate polite society because then they can advocate their position, push their position, and gain better access to society, thereby infecting more of our traditions and institutions. And that is something that, once again, the salivating mainstream media is not going to address because it would work against their propagandistic goal. But we see that with Obama down with the Castro brothers, once again, there seems to be this power vacuum because America is not leading.
Well, speaking of the Fabians and, their agenda, and then you look at the terrorists, the Islamofascists, nothing but full of hatred and vitriolic obsessions. See, they're actually more extreme than the Fabians to a certain degree. They're more extreme in, the short term, because they'll come out, they strap bombs on themselves, go and blow places up, kill a lot of people, and that is the desired effect that they want. But at the same time, they kind of take another play out of the playbook of the Fabians to infiltrate polite society. Look at the 19 terrorists that carried out 9/11. They were here in this country, residing here, unknown as terrorists.
Yeah,
for
they shaved their
8
beards.
years.
They shaved their beards, they drink, they would violate some of the Islamic scripture to fit in. And why? Because it's okay to do that to the infidel. It's okay to lie to the infidel. That is the insidious nature of these Islamo-fascist terrorists. That is why they're so dangerous. And if it starts to be that there's too many Middle Easterners or people that look of the Middle Eastern persuasion, then they'll go to Chechnya and they'll use those that look different in order to basically beguile the TSA and other security apparatuses that we have in place so that they can then be successful. Think about what happened today in Brussels. They attacked the waiting area of an airport, the area where people congregate, where it's not so much the security zone. And why? It's because that is something that's been overlooked. And this is what makes security so difficult. It's because the terrorists only have to be right once. The security apparatus and the defenders have to be right 99.99999, basically 100% of the time. And that is, I'm sorry, but that's a mere impossibility. There is no such thing as perfection in this earthly plane. And it would be better if the people could be well armed and defend themselves. But this brings up a point that Newsbusters pointed out. There was an analyst on MSNBC who basically went in front of the cameras and said, the problem in Brussels is there's too much easy access to firearms. What? We're talking about a European nation. Europe has some of the strictest gun control laws. Once again, this clearly demonstrates that gun-free zones don't work and that gun control doesn't work. Can we finally put that to bed and to rest so that we can go about actually solving the problems that face all of us?
Well, that's the thing. They don't want viable solutions.
No, of course not.
This is why they run individuals and bolster up individuals that are of their own ilk from the Fabian society and the Fabian echelon, people like Donald Trump. Again, he doesn't have any viable solutions. Why? Because he omits and negates to point out how he's going to do things. Now, the closest he came to saying how he's going to accomplish something is regarding the wall. We're going to build a wall and make Mexico pay for it. Okay. How? Again, how? How are you going to do these things? Oh, I know. You don't even know how you're going to do these things. You're just out there, spewing diuretic nonsense out of your gaping skull cave because it's riling people up. You're working on their emotions. Again, the emotions that you created with your little Fabian friends in order to use that to garner support and advance your agenda. That's what it boils down to. And again, they don't want solutions. And when they have somebody that has the solution, has been working on solutions for a long time, is running, you want to try and stalwart him or silence him and push him out of the way. Why? Because you are afraid that the solutions will work. You don't want the solutions to work. You want continued chaos to where you can keep building up your political correctness, your revisionist history, and your indoctrination of our youth. Guess what? That ends now. Right now.
He's trying to pull a rabbit out of his posterior, but it doesn't work. Yeah. America has faced the problem of terrorism at least since 9/11. And again, this is why we started the program asking the question of whether terrorism would be that catalyst that would define the 21st century. And I can recall that during that time, the cancerous doctrine of political correctness was plaguing us even then. We're talking a period of almost 15 years ago. And George W. Bush referring to Islam as the religion of peace. What's so asinine about that is if you look at the way that the Quran refers to the so-called prophet Muhammad, it called him the prophet of the sword. Does that sound peaceful? Doesn't sound peaceful to me. And that's because it's not peaceful. If you look at the root meaning of the word Islam in Arabic, it means to submit. So in other words, these barbarian savages are looking to force everyone who does not adhere to their twisted medieval ideology into absolute abject submission. And that is diametrically opposed to our national character, heritage, and identity. We as Americans are staunchly opposed to that. We've been opposed to it since our founding. It's part of the reason why we fought with the Barbary pirates off of what is now Libya. And you remember the Tripoli pirates? It is one of the fights that we have been engaged in since this country came into being. And it doesn't show any signs of getting any better. These people are twisted. They want to create a global caliphate or a global Islamic government. Well, no, they can't do that. We won't let them do that. But in order to do that, we must secure our position as a leader in foreign policy. That means that we must maintain a strong military. It means that we must be willing to identify our enemies, and we must be willing to fight them.
Yeah, and if people are not willing to fight, and they're not willing to stand up, first of all, for your own rights, our shared rights, and our shared constitution, if you're not willing to stand up for that, then get out of the way.
Yeah.
Move aside. Let those of us that are capable and willing to do this do what we have to do. Stand aside. And at the end of it, when the smoke clears, guess what? You'll be able to go back to your complacent little lives, which, by the way, will be made a lot better for you. You're welcome. See, this reminds me of some military strategy and tactics. And I learned this, believe it or not, from playing a little board game called Risk, which I'm ever thankful for my dad teaching me and my brothers how to play. You see, we have all these different issues going on. We know what is detrimental, what's not, what forces are standing at our forefront, so to speak. But you can't just focus on that. You have to have your head on a swivel. You have to pay attention to the whole board. While somebody is staging an attack or a frontal assault with whatever it is, political correctness, indoctrination, gun control, violation of our rights, whatever the case is, while they're staging any one single particular attack, you best be sure they're gearing up and strategizing for all the other attacks to be able to come in and blindside you. Now, here's the trick to this. If you know what the frontal attack is, you already know how to combat it. You put measures in place to hold them back, to stave them off and keep them at bay, while you go out and you find these other sniping attacks and you eliminate them. That's how you have to do, but you can't spread yourself too thin. You cannot devote all of your energy in one area, but you cannot take all your resources and spread them out too thin to where you can't defend any one given attack on its own. That's what we have to do. With regards to terrorism, it's simple. It's very simple. You know how you take care of these terrorists and you send a message to them and you set them back to the Stone Age? You go out and you take out the one thing that they love and cherish the most. You flatten it. And I'm talking about Mecca.
They're camels?
You flatten Mecca. And what's that going to do? It's going to enrage them. And at that point, they're going to have the blind fury in anger to where they spread themselves thin. They all come out of the woodworks. It's kind of like lighting a rat on fire and letting it, singeing its hair and then sending it back into the wood pile. So they all come scattering out. That's how you combat terrorism. That's how you solve that problem.
And you know what it also states is we know that there is no chance of coexisting with these Islamofascists. No. They have no interest in doing so. As far as they are concerned, the West and its philosophy of liberty should be eradicated from the earth. This poses a significant problem for the United States. Obama has gone out of his way to weaken us and to pull us away from the commanding leadership role that we've enjoyed since the close of the Second World War. It's frightening to know that the sacrifice of the greatest generation is being squandered by such a feckless leader. And then we must restore sanity in the United States. But the next problem is that the Republican frontrunner is not advocating such a position. He would rather have our allies pay for the leadership role we have, which was designated by treaty, and he would like to lessen our role in NATO, which is really ridiculous because when you stop and consider that NATO has now become one of the top fighters of terrorism, one of the top organizations for counterterrorism measures, if we take less of a leadership role in that, it means that our interests are not going to be put first. And you see, that's the problem. When he says everything is negotiable, he is putting our interests at risk.
Well, and it's not that it's not only that he has an issue with NATO, but on the flip side of it, he's bolstering up the UN. He's showing more favoritism towards the UN. The same United Nations that is guilty of going into countries and committing basically, crimes against humanity, so to speak. Raping, villages and, the women and children, so on and so forth. Allowing things to happen to where terrorists can get their hands on, more munitions and caches of weapons, so on and so. So let's see. He wants to support an organization, by the way, which has no authority here in the United States whatsoever, and discount an organization of a group of allies of the United States, which, was enacted by a treaty under the Constitution. Yeah, all because he has this grand idea of, well, in order for that to work, Israel has to pay for, defensive and sacrifice things and pay for, defensive measures. Pay to whom? Who is Israel going to pay to have these measures? Pay the United States? Sorry, that would violate our treaty with Israel. See,
it makes me wonder if his negotiation skills are as good as he thinks.
No, to the clucking Don, that's all it is with him. It's about making money. And it wouldn't surprise me in the least bit, God forbid, if he ever became president, that he would use some kind of executive order crap to institute some kind of, clucking Don foundation or whatever for that money to be shuttled into, and then he ends up getting a derivative from it. Personally, I wouldn't put it past this guy. The guy's a con artist. He's a charlatan. He is a hot oil snake salesman.
Yeah.
It's just it's garbage. And how anybody could support him, based on, and I know individuals that support him, for their reasons, and they just can't shake that emotional mentality of anger. Well, folks, we're just as angered as you are. If in fact, we're probably angrier than you are. Our anger is at a biglier level than yours.
But you know what it really proves, Jeremy? This all simply proves that for Donald, everything is just about the bottom dollar. That's all that matters to him. We cannot run our foreign policy as a business. That would be a form of national suicide. America's strength comes from our values and the stance that we have always been willing to take to defend not only ourselves, but also our allies. And all of these treaties were negotiated by people that I consider to be far superior negotiators than to clucking Donald, who couldn't negotiate his way out of having to declare bankruptcy for his companies 4 times. And again, everybody says that because he's such a great businessman, that he would be great for this country. I'm sorry, but I don't think he's that great of a businessman. Trump Magazine, that's gone. Trump Steaks that he sold at the Sharper Image, that's gone. Trump Shuttle, that's gone.
Trump Vodka.
Yeah, I mean, what in the hell has he accomplished? Other than taking a little bit of daddy's money and getting a bad haircut and spreading his name through marketing and branding. We don't need a marketeer. We need a president.
You know who else was a businessman, Randy?
Herbert Hoover.
Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff was a businessman. Now,
so was Charles Lucky Luciano.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, a co-partner or a business associate of Trump's.
No, he's dead, but...
Yeah. But here's the thing. The United States of America is not a business. We are a constitutional representative republic. If you want to run this country like a business, guess what? We, the people, are the shareholders. We are the board of directors. Period. That's how it works. You get no deals, none, without our say-so. You think you could just waltz into anywhere you want and say, this is what I want done, do it. Nope, sorry. Wrong answer, Trumpolini.
But Jeremy, that's something he doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand it. Everything that he preaches is pure bombast, and seemingly has
to understand it.
Yeah, and seemingly has no connection with reality. Just yesterday, he was demanding that our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel, as you have mentioned, be forced to pay for the sort of information we share with them and the sort of weapons technology we share with them. Folks, if you stop and think about the intelligence relationship that we have with the Israelis and the type of security that they have and the type of intelligence they have that is bar none with the Mossad, do you think that if we started charging them money with that, with respect to our relationship with them, that they would continue to just readily hand over information to us?
No.
The quid pro quo would be gone. It would be gone. Why? Because of Trump's greed. You know, I don't have any problem against greed per se, except that when it's used in a narcissistic manner that loses sight of the greater good of the country. Nation states are more than businesses. And I don't think Donnie can wrap his little wig around that. I just think that the wig is too thick for it to sink in for him.
Loosen your hairnet, Don. Loosen your hairnet. Because see, here's the thing. Another thing that's lost with doing negotiations and deals like that, our ability to take said information that would be viable to us, being able to have it, to implement it, to prevent terrorist attacks here. That would be gone, which means the terrorist attacks would happen more frequently and on a biglier scale.
The bigliest of bigly scales.
The bigliest of bigliest scales. Yeah. But he doesn't think that far ahead. He doesn't, because he wants what he wants and he wants it now.
Like a child.
Answer. Yeah, a petulant little clucking duck. The petulant Don. Forget Teflon Don. He's the petulant Don.
Yeah. And, you know, this is why I think it's a bad idea to hand over the reins of political power in this country to a buffoon who seems to be taking his foreign policy positions out of the Ron Paul playbook. Stick your head in the sand, ignore America's position, allow our enemies to grow and gather strength, leading from his behind, just like Barack Hussein Obama has. Folks, haven't we already seen enough of this in the disastrous 2 terms of this Barack Hussein Obama regime? Haven't we seen enough of the apology tours that Obama has taken around the world, and where he's weakened our traditional allies and stood and propped up our traditional foes? It's asinine. And I just think that Trump would double down on this, because Trump is also of the mindset that we can just talk to our enemies, that we can talk our way out of problems. That's not the way the world works. It's never the way the world has worked. Talking doesn't work. You want to stop a bully, you slap him across the face and you show him that you're meaner, nastier, and bigger than they are.
Yeah. So it's the same concept that Adolf Obama has been using with regard to Iran. Well, you know, we'll just, be perfectly clear on this and sit across the table and, you know, share some kind of doily with our little, Middle Eastern, tea and our Habuki, smoke set and everything. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You do not negotiate with terrorists. The leaders of Iran are terrorists. Yeah. Those that are attacking Israel are terrorists. Those individuals that hit Brussels are terrorists. You have individuals here in the United States that are advocating that we do not profile these individuals. Guess what? You're terrorist sympathizers. There's no negotiating with you. There's no negotiating with any of them. That's not how this works. It's not like it's a Facebook page where, if you don't like what somebody says, you can unfriend them. It doesn't work like that. That's not how any of this works. Stop it.
Like that old Geico commercial.
But I swear, it's just lunacy, absolute lunacy. And now my voice is starting to crack because of it. Thank you very much, Don.
Yeah, well, they are lunatics because they follow the moon god Allah. But just because we advocate for a strong foreign policy doesn't mean that we think we should go around nation building in the Middle East. That would be a mistake. These people, I don't think they can comprehend our idea of nation building. And no, that's not some racist point of view. It just goes into what they believe. And they're not a race anyway. They're a faith. It goes down the line that they are tribal in their nature. And even when they become supposedly advanced nations, they maintain the tribal mentality, the tribal ties. And therefore, they're not going to appreciate our Western philosophy because they have no history or experience with it. Therefore, we will have to clearly identify the enemy, move to strike them out, and then get out. Okay, that is one area where the Donaldist can be right. But the way that he wants to go about it, I disagree with. Making our allies pay for it means that it's not going to get done, and our best interests are going to falter and fade in the region, and that is just going to further weaken our global standing and our hegemonic position in the geopolitical arena.
Well, that's a perfect example of how the phrase actions speak louder than words applies. Because he could say, we go in there, we hit them hard, we leave them, completely destitute, and then we leave. Okay, that's fine. I'm all for that. But like you said, the way he wants to go about doing it and other measures he wants to implement, that those actions is what's going to nullify the strong words of going in, decimating them, and leaving. You completely undoing what you say you're going to do. That is likening it to, being a man of your word and standing on your principles. If you say you're going to do something, do as you say. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't mince words about it. Don't have all these limp-wristed actions that's going to come around and make it to where you're knee deep in a sausage fest because you got caught with your pants down.
Mm-hmm.
And that puts us all in compromising positions, which means it's going to make it that much harder for us to restore that has been lost with this country.
And think about how he says in The Art of the Deal that whenever he approaches the negotiation table, he is going to take the harshest position and then slowly walk his way back. You can't walk your way back with these people. First of all, they're going to lie to you because they don't negotiate bold-facedly. They will come out and they will say they're going to do something and they'll never do it. We saw this in the Vietnam War and the Korean War, where the communists would go to the negotiation table, they would agree to do something, and then they wouldn't do it. And they'd blame us for it. This is what charlatans and frauds and all of the snake oil con artist types do. And one would think because Donald Trump is cut from the same cloth that he would understand this. But again, it's not that he doesn't understand. It's just that he doesn't give a damn. He cares about his bottom dollar. He cares about Donald Trump and nothing else. But you can't just care about yourself and run a nation. Look at what we have with Barack Hussein Obama. That is what we have now. That is what we have suffered under for nearly 8 years now. Do we want to repeat that? Do we want a third Barack Hussein Obama term? Because, folks, I guarantee you, if Donaldus Julius Caesar Trumpus gets the nomination for the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP, it will be a third term of Obama. Because, if by chance he wins, which it's very likely he won't, he will operate like he's always operated, self-interested. Yes. But more likely, it's going to be Hillary Rotten Clinton that gets in. And remember, he was her top donor. Then we are going to see her double down on the failed policies of Obama. Plus, she's going to flood the country with the so-called Islamic refugees from this destabilizing effect that was created by Obama when he supported the Arab Spring.
Yeah. So basically, folks, it's very simple. Trump's the nominee. There's the possibility that he might win by some, miraculous, follicle, Merlin wand waving that he gets elected. We're going to see Obama 3.0. If he gets the nomination and Hillary beats him, which she will, because she's more patient than he is. She's smarter than he is. You know, she's got biglier words than he does. It'll be Obama 3.0. Yeah. So this is what we're facing. Do you want the possibility of a third term of Obama, whether it be in the guise of, you know, a clucking Don, or in the guise of the Whore of Babylon? Or do you want somebody that's going to put an end to all of that? Because Ted Cruz has the track record. He has the proven record of saying what he's going to do and then doing it.
Yeah. And, you know, the other aspect with Donaldus is his tariff. All of his tariffs plans and other foreign policy positions will put America at a significant disadvantage.
Which will increase his wad stashed in his pocket.
Sure. And we have to be intelligent about how we go about handling our foreign affairs. I think the major problem that Trump has is that he isn't good at communicating his points. This would only make our major relations throughout the world more difficult. Yes, it's true. He claims that he'd hire great people. The problem is he will have to be the representative of the United States. It can't be the people he hires. And I'm not sure that he's cut out for that. In fact, I know that he's not. Look at the way he communicates. He cannot, for the life of him, form a coherent sentence. He cannot speak clearly as we are speaking clearly right here and right now. That is going to lead to miscommunications, missteps, misfires, all sorts of problems that are going to come back and haunt this republic. And it's all going to be because he's going to be arrogant, because you remember he said that he gets his foreign policy stuff from himself and his bigly brain. And he's got a good bigly brain.
Yeah. The shows he watches.
Yeah.
Well, F Troop and,
G.I. Joe.
Nash.
I'm sure he thinks he's Cobra Commander.
Yeah.
But
actually, what he reminds me of is Dr. Seuss on a drinking binge. That's what he reminds me of when he speaks.
No, because Dr. Seuss, even on a drinking binge, would be coherent. That's the problem.
I stand corrected.
He's not coherent. Now, the whole thing about Trump that I find troubling is that there now have been news reports of ambassadors from various nations coming out and voicing concern about Trump possibly securing the nomination and presidency. This is a rather unprecedented development and doesn't give me a reason to be optimistic about the projections of Trump or Trump's chances. This is another reason why we must place Cruz in the White House. We need to make America smart again. We need to make America sane again.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. And this is why we're constantly harping on the notion of we the people, the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty and authority, having a fluent, working, and understanding knowledge of our shared Constitution. Because it is that guide, it is that very document is what empowers us all. And when people understand it, they accept that empowerment. They learn how to use it. They learn how to, A, hold themselves accountable so that, B, they can hold other people accountable like these elected officials. And I use that term loosely in an Ann Coulter kind of way, that they can be held accountable for their actions. See, Ted Cruz understands this. Ted Cruz, A, has a very fluent working knowledge and understanding of the Constitution. That allows him to say the things that he does and place the authority back in the hands of we the people so that we can hold him accountable. Why? Because he's willing to be held accountable for what he says and does. He expects us to hold him accountable. He said so much. He said so much as when he was running for senator back in 2012. He told people in a roundabout way, if I'm elected, I'm going to do this. And basically, if I don't, elect to have me removed, remove me from office next term. So he's willing to deal with that. He's willing to suffer the consequences for his actions. He's willing to take responsibility for his actions. And he's willing to educate and teach we the people to do the same.
And again, this ties into why it is so important for us to have a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution. Because when we do, then we realize when those leaders that are vying for the highest office in the land are not qualified. We have to see whether they are going to abide by the United States Constitution, which, pursuant to Article 6, Clause 2, the Supremacy Clause, is the supreme law of the land. Clucking Donald, just like Bernie Sanders, Comrade Colonel Sanders, and Hillary Rotten Clinton, they don't adhere to the Constitution. They don't follow the Constitution. They loathe and despise the Constitution. Why? Because it doesn't allow them to concentrate ill-begotten power in their hands. And they always want to concentrate power in their own hands, their unworthy hands, at the expense of the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, the popular sovereigns, we the people. Again, the only lens that matters when attempting to determine whether or not a candidate who is vying for the highest office is qualified for that office is the Constitution itself. There is no other test that matters. Why? Because the Constitution defines not only the proper scope and application of government, but our national identity and the positions that a government can or cannot take. And if the government goes beyond that, the Constitution is a contract. And when the government violates the clear and concise terms of that contract, they are in breach of contract, allowing there to be a redress of grievances for we the people. That is the entire reason behind having a written Constitution.
And see, folks, you'll never learn something like this from Trump University. Ever.
I don't think you
never will.
Squat from Trump University. Trump is you.
Yeah, Trump is you. It's, and again, going back to Bernie Sanders and the whore Babylon, Hillary Clinton, the Hildebeest, we know what they're all about. They're predictable. Yeah. They have followed the same line time and time again. They are so predictable that we don't have to worry about them being a full frontal assault on us because we can hold them in check because of the predictability of their actions. We know what they're going to do. We know what stances they take. They've never changed their stances. They've always held those same points of view. Whereas Donaldus has changed his points of view multiple times.
He changes it every 25 seconds. He's consistently inconsistent.
That makes him more of a problem and more of an issue if, again, putting it on, the board of the board game Risk, it's almost like he's been tapped to orchestrate some kind of sideline or flank attack is what it is. He's got everybody. They have everybody focus on Hillary. Oh, we have to have somebody to beat Hillary. Oh, Hillary's an issue. Don't worry about Hillary Clinton. She is easily taken down. Easily. What we have to worry about is the growing threat and the perceived threat, the unpredictable threat with Donaldus. He's setting all these brush fires, all these flank maneuvers to try and combat us. That's who we have to deal with. Hillary Clinton is not going to progress any further with their attack. They're not going to do it. And people say, well, yeah, they're going to, start using this and this. No, that's all predictable. We know what kind of ads she's going to run. We know how she's going to ramp up her campaign. It's the same way that the Democrats and the Fabians have done it for years.
It's why she's not as big of a threat as people would like to think she is. Because she is, as you said, predictable. She hasn't changed her positions other than to go further to the left. In fact, that's the only direction she's going to be able to go because of Comrade Colonel Sanders being there. And if he's going to drive the Democrats further into the arms of the Red Brigade, then that should make them more easily defeatable. Except that we have this raging hairpiece of a lunatic running around like a chicken with its head cut off with the hair protruding out of that opening. It's not going to work. It's not going to work because he is too far extreme and he is too inconsistent. Remember, back in the 2004 election, what killed John Kerry was his waffling, flipping like he was windsurfing on a gusty day. That is not the way to win in this political chess match. But then again, when you look at Donald Trump's foreign policy, he says that in this Cold War period, we have to stop being chess players and become deal makers. Well, I'm sorry, you don't make deals with nations that are allies or enemies, or with factions that don't give two excrements about your deal making. They'll go into your negotiations with a suicide vest on to blow themselves up, to kill you in the process. It's a totally different way of thinking than a business mentality. And that is why you cannot approach foreign policy or the running of a nation, the true running of a nation, as a business, because it goes beyond the parameters of that. There are greater things at stake than the bottom dollar. But that's what Trump is always about. Look at the way that he built Trump Tower, charging the most amount of money for rent while using the most god-awful materials in building the place. You can't cut corners like that in foreign policy. You can't cut corners like that with respect to our fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to us by our Creator. To do that means that you are doing a grave disservice to the popular sovereigns, which is why we will not and cannot tolerate that sort of positionship from anyone who is proclaiming to be the leader of the United States.
I'm going to try and simplify all of this. And what Randy just said was simplistic enough, but for those individuals that are going to join in later and listen to this later on down the road, let me explain it to you this way. The United States, think of it as your home. Are you going to negotiate with somebody that breaks into your home in the middle of the night to do harm to you and your families? No. If you have a fluent working and understanding of the United States Constitution and what your rights are, you're going to defend your home. You're going to do everything in your power to neutralize that threat. You're not going to say, "Oh, hey there, Mr. Rapist. Yeah, I have a 12-year-old daughter, but you know what? Before you shoot me and kill me and get me out of the way and proceed to go up to her room to rape her and then kill her, we're going to hash out a couple of things first. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about..." No. You know what you do? You meet force with equal force. And if necessary...
If they're going to say that this is the raging fires of anger, let's simplify it even further. Would you hire the arsonist to put out the fires that he set?
Yeah.
I think it would be a pretty stupid position to hire the very person that is setting all of these brush fires to destroy us from within to supposedly save the nation. That is insanity.
You don't run circumstances or entities like that as a business.
No.
You don't. There's a time to run things like a business, and those are business dealings. This is not a business deal. This is not, there's no negotiating here. In order to run a business, you have to be able to negotiate certain things. Guess what? The United States is founded on the principles rooted in natural law tendencies, meaning unalienable rights endowed to us by our Creator, the Lord God Almighty. They are not negotiable. Period.
And you know, Jeremy, even in business, there are certain things that you don't negotiate on.
Yes.
Let's take the mission statement of a corporation that's required to be in the Articles of Incorporation.
Yep.
That statement, which states the pure objective of the business, you don't negotiate on that. That is written in stone. If you negotiate on that, you allow someone to pierce the corporate veil because you are violating that basic sacred agreement of the company. Well, it's the same thing with the Constitution of the United States. But Trump has always run his companies like an alter ego. It's why his name is always labeled all over everything. And that's how he has been able to hide behind it and say, well, I never really filed for bankruptcy. It was just my companies. Well, still, it speaks poorly as to his leadership skills, because why would he allow his name to be associated with something that was so poorly managed that it would have to declare bankruptcy?
Now, let's see. I don't know any businessman that would put his name on something that, has been detrimental to his business. It actually reminds me of an interview, and I can't remember which late night show it was on, but I want to say it was Jay Leno, but I'm not 100% certain. But Trump was asked the question, if you go out of business or you have to file bankruptcy, what are your plans? What's your plan of action? He says, it's simple. I just start a new business. I'll just set up another business. I'll set up another entity. That's right there is where he exposed himself of saying, you know what? This business files bankruptcy or whatever, I'm just going to start a new business in its place. It's a revolving door of having a shell game.
Mm-hmm. It's two-card Monty.
It's empty suitedness is what it is, in a bigly fashion.
And you see, this is where we can see that Cruz understands how our national security works. He possesses a key understanding of the challenges that face us, both big and small. That's what we need after facing the disastrous 2 terms of the Obama regime. They have weakened us to such a point that we're going to have to spend a fair amount of time restoring the military. The confidence that former Texas Governor Rick Perry has in Cruz is something that bodes well for him with respect to foreign policy in the military. We know that America's military has been one of the preeminent reasons that the United States, in fact, it is the preeminent reason that the United States has been such a powerful presence on the geopolitical stage. This is why Trump's positions bother me so much. It's like he would continue the failures of the Obama regime. Of course, that makes sense because he praised a lot of the failed policies of Obama's regime. He supported the bank bailouts, he supported cash for clunkers, and also the dangerous mortgage policies that caused the housing bubble to burst. In fact, remember just about a month or 2 before, that's when he created Trump mortgages?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
He's such a brilliant businessman that he didn't see the writing on the wall.
Well, let's throw in there another faux pas, if you will, of Trump's.
Right.
Back in 2012, and see, Trump wants to take credit, and his supporters want to take credit of the whole building of the wall thing is Trump's idea. He came up with it, and now Ted Cruz mentions it, and he stole that idea from Trump. Wrong. That was one of the key things that Ted Cruz ran on as a platform in 2012 when he was running for Senate of the state of Texas, closing the borders and building a wall. Meanwhile, at the same time, Trump was supporting amnesty.
Yeah, remember back in 2012, he said that Romney's self-deportation policy was too mean-spirited. It was too rough. We can't treat them like that. This is where the short memory span of the the Trumpster divers really works against them. And they just want to disregard any facts that are there. It's as though facts are like sunlight to a vampire. It's going to burn them. And that's why they avoid it. And then they resort to personal ad hominem attacks or say that you're taking whatever you're saying out of context. How can you take his past positions out of context? And you see, they want to say that this is some revenge against politicians. But the nice thing about a politician is you have a voting record to go off of, something to firmly hold their feet to the fire. Not with Trump. We have to go off of his past statements. And yes, it's unfortunate that he has this ability to be consistently inconsistent, but that should be sending up red flags, warning signs, and alarm bells for everybody. Because if he cannot hold a consistent position, then how do we know how he's going to run the country? We shouldn't gamble with our fundamental and unalienable rights. To gamble with our rights is to risk everything. And without our rights, we truly have nothing. We can't afford that. That's not good for the nation. It's not good for the people. And it's certainly not good for the future. Because given the weak circumstances that face the United States right now, if we continue down this path, which is a disastrous path, and is certainly the path that Trump seems to be going down, then we are only going to stand to make the country weaker and make our enemies stronger. And if we make our enemies stronger, make no bones about it, folks, they will move to annihilate us. That is their desire. That is their stated desire. They have declared war on us while we stick our heads in the sand from suffering from ostrich syndrome because of this cancerous, poisonous, and ill-begotten idea of political correctness.
And again, political correctness, when politicians want to latch onto it and utilize it to advance their own agenda or to advance their stances, kind of like what Trump does, even though he says, I'm not PC. No, yes, you are. Yes, you are. Because when you adhere to the idea of making a sovereign nation like Israel pay for its defenses, that's politically correct. That falls right in line with it. When you make the statements of, we're gonna win big, I'm smart. No, see, what you're doing is you're using a false sense of not being politically correct. You don't have the stones to actually come right out and be not politically correct in the fashion that Randy and I do, or in the fashion that Ted Cruz does, because you are not good at speaking. I'm a good speaker. I'm a great speaker. I speak, big. I have a bigly words and a bigly brain and blah, blah, blah. Shut up. Just shut up right now, because what you're doing is creating more of these poorly uneducated fools that you love so much.
Like Ava Braun, Little Orphan Annie, Yep, Yep, Toto.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, again, you are creating a desired response from individuals because you're building it up and then you're tearing them right down and utilizing their response that they're giving you that you wanted to reprogram them. This is why I am more pissed off than your supporters. You think your supporters are angry? You think they're mad because of being lied to by politicians? You know what? I have that and then some. And the extra added bonus that I have that makes me more pissed off than your supporters is people like you.
Yeah, he's an
doing
enabler.
This to my fellow Americans and dumbing them down. I will not tolerate that.
Using their anger against them. That is the major problem. Trump has taken this position. He belies the fact or belittles the fact that he is the one that has funded this, that he is the one that has enabled this. He brags about buying politicians. Okay, so if he bought a politician, then that would suggest that the politician was doing what he wanted. And therefore, when you look at who he's given more money to over the years, you would see that he wants these politicians to do the hardline Democrat stance. He even stated in years past that the economy does better under Democrats.
Mhm.
Well,
Meaning
let's
he's
look at
on
the way the economy is doing in Obama. It's not doing well. Yes, he does better. And that's because of the palms that he's greased and the type of crony capitalism atmosphere that he has established. And meanwhile, we, the people, get screwed.
And see what it boils down to again. He wants to lump everybody, all of his supporters, in and say we're gonna win big, we're gonna make so much money, we're gonna do this and that. What he's doing is basically all of these rallies that he has every time he speaks, it's nothing more than one of these get rich quick schemes.
It's Trump University. It's Trumpist U.
It's Trump U personified is what it is. Because what he's doing is he's telling you that, well, you stick with me, you vote for me, we're going to win big, we're going to make big amounts of money, hugely amounts of money, bigly amounts of money, this and that. What he's doing is he's turning you into little foot soldiers to do his bidding. Meanwhile, all he has to do is sit back and rake in the cash. That's all that's happening. He's getting you to do his dirty work.
He's the Queen Trump of the beehive.
Yeah.
And you know, the way that he is footing himself of being consistently inconsistent on a foreign policy footing, this causes unnecessary confusion and uncertainty. America's position must be firm and clear. That's the only way we can make friend and foe alike understand what our position is. Again, this is why not everything can be up for negotiation. Trump likes to think that he's a great negotiator. However, certain things just cannot be up for negotiation. Our stance with terrorists should not be open to negotiation. We should not be giving them any semblance of credibility. That will only embolden them to enact dangerous positions and plans against us. Then Trump mentioned that the mastermind behind today's attack would have spoken sooner because he would have used torture. But, you know, there's a problem with that. Anyone who is being tortured can and will simply state anything to make the pain end. We also know that these guys have no problem lying to the so-called infidel. Thus, I don't believe that torture would reveal any significant information. Plus, by Trump stating that he plays his hand for the terrorists to use this to their advantage. In other words, by saying, I'm going to torture them so they'll tell us the truth, they'll know, oh, if he's just going to turn to torture, we'll just lie.
Yeah. It's, again, this plays right into an aspect of foreign policy. When you have individuals like our special operations forces. Now, folks, many of you listening know that I've never been in the military. I've never claimed to have been in the military. But I do have a somewhat, basic knowledge of how the military is structured and how it works. And I do have kind of a basic knowledge of, through research, on some of the tactics used to extract information from enemy combatants, like waterboarding. Waterboarding works. It's not a very pleasant thing, so I've been told. However, when you tip your hand, like Randy says, to the tactics that you're going to do, that would be like going back to World War II, the Allied forces letting Adolf Hitler know, hey, just so you know, we're going to storm the beaches of Normandy on this day and this time, and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, it'd be like announcing that we had broken the Enigma code. Hey, Germany, we're reading all of your messages.
Right. You are removing a key component of defeating your enemy, and that key component is the element of surprise. When you capture an enemy combatant, you don't want them to have any idea or inclination whatsoever of what you're going to do to them to get information. You let them perceive what you're going to do, because that creates doubt within themselves. It's all psychological. That's what it is. If they know you're going to torture them, like Randy said, they're just going to lie. But if they're not sure if you're going to torture them or not, if they have no idea if you're just going to sit across from a table from them and ask them a bunch of questions and simply interview them or interrogate them, if they don't know what their fate is going to be, then they have no defense mechanism to put into place to keep the information from coming out. Trump doesn't understand this. And this bodes right into negotiating. But he wrote The Art of the Deal, remember? He knows all about negotiating. Sorry, you don't know jack boo about negotiating, Trump. I can negotiate better than you. And you would find that out if you ever grew a set and came onto our show, which you probably won't because you're a coward.
And then, Jeremy, we also have to think of the propaganda victory that this would give to the Islamists. Therefore, any time that any information is given out, they can sit there and basically go, Muhammad Jihad, look, they are using torture because you believe in Islam, Durka Sherpa Allah Bakalah. All right, so you see, they're going to play that up because they don't care about lying. They love to lie. They live to lie. And of course, they're going to try and stick it into our eye each and every available opportunity that arises. And Trump is playing into their hands. Trump likes to think that he's savage. Remember, he praised the communist Chinese for their viciousness against the students at Tiananmen Square as being a good position to hold. Well, I'm going to tell you right now that the Islamo-fascists will always be tougher than Donald. We see that Donald's not that tough because he runs away from debating Ted Cruz. He runs away from Megyn Kelly. He's afraid of her. Why? Because he runs from us. Why? Because he is a coward. He is a poltroon. He has no backbone whatsoever. And this is certainly not someone that we should be letting within a mile of the reins of political power of this great representative republic of ours. The very fact that he's gotten as far as he has is a testament to just how far the United States has fallen, and that is troubling. And I say it's troubling because it means that it's going to be that much harder to restore the Constitution, to return all levels of government back to strict adherence to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared Constitution. Remember, folks, we have said going back to our premiere episode, which aired on September 11th, 2015, that the key has been with us since the inception of this country over 230 years ago. And that key is strict adherence to the Constitution. The Constitution itself is the resolution to the problems that currently hamper and plague the United States of America.
It is the solution of all solutions, period. Period. You're not going to hear any other talk show host, you're not going to hear any other pundit say, well, you know, these are all the problems we face and everything, but, you know, we have the solution. No. You're not going to hear them say it. Why? Because they want people to come back for more. What are they going to say next? You know, what are they going to say next? Folks, we don't do this for ratings. We don't do this to become, you know, giant, you know, mega stars in broadcasting or whatever. We don't have to. We don't have to. We do this for you. We do this for the preservation of our country, our republic. And we're always talking about solutions. Well, here it is. Getting back to the Constitution. You want a solution? There it is. Because you implement that solution, every other problem that pops up, every other issue that pops up, it will automatically provide another solution based on the ultimate solution of the Constitution. The economy will fix itself, because if the Constitution is adhered to, we don't have any of these unconstitutional agencies like the EPA, the Department of Education, the FCC, the whole list of alphabets regarding these agencies.
Our founding fathers had to have had something right in order to create the longest, contiguous, uninterrupted running constitutional document in all of world history. It shows that the natural law tenets that underpin our shared United States Constitution truly works, because it goes to the quintessential nature of what it is to be a sovereign citizen. Our founding fathers were revolutionary because they understood that sovereignty roots from the American people. It starts with us and it branches out from us through delegated powers. And that is why when you look at the natural order of things, the lower or closer the government gets to the people, that is the more pure or more powerful one, because the people exert such control over it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's strength in numbers is what it is, what it boils down to. We, the people, outnumber those that want to make these unconstitutional laws and regulations placed on us. And people want to say, well, talk about this election. Well, it's over. The whole campaign race should be over. Donald Trump won. No, nothing is over until we, the people, say so. Period. That goes for campaign. That goes for election campaigns. That goes for legislation. That is one of the reasons why we have the judicial system that we have. Because when there's a law that is instituted, and I'll give an example, Obamacare, which I'm still kind of upset that the IRS did not penalize me, because they just, I was really looking forward to breaking my foot off in their derrieres for penalizing me and violating my rights. But no, they didn't do it. And that's just my luck. They don't want to give me the opportunity. And I'm beginning to think it's because they know exactly what will happen. I will exercise my constitutional rights, and that will be it for them. Period. Done deal.
We have to be willing to stand up for everything that our nation represents. And the major characterization that clearly defines who we are, both as a nation and a people, is our shared constitution. And that is the quintessential nature of our identity. It's why the revisionist historians have been going out of their way for decade after decade to attack our national character, heritage, spirit, but above all, our identity. And it's something that Zygmunt Dobbs warned about in his magnus opus, Keynes at Harvard. He said that these Fabian socialists were working tirelessly to infiltrate our institutions of education, to infiltrate the information media sources. And we see some 50 to 60 years later that this has only grown worse, that we have not taken the steps necessary to stop it. It's as though we have become complacent as a people. And in a sense, it is because we have. And Dobbs explained this. He explained that the Fabians are banking on the fact that the average American citizen, the decent, hardworking, red-blooded American citizen, is going to be so caught up in the mere survival under these overzealous regulations that were incrementally worked in, that they're not going to have the political energy or capital to expend in order to stand up to these problems, in order to inform themselves of the problems. But now that we have the internet, it should be that much easier to actually look into this stuff. And that's why we say, don't take what we're saying at face value. We want you to look into this yourself, to empower yourself, to get a better understanding of it. So then you can say the most powerful two-letter word in the English lexicon that is nearly universally understood. No, you cannot take away our fundamental and unalienable rights that were endowed to us by our Creator. No, you cannot become a despot. No, you cannot step upon our rights. That is what we need to do as a nation and a people. And should we fail to do so, then we are only going to see these problems accelerate. We are only going to see these tyrants work to oppress us at a greater rate than they currently are. And that is why we must be proactive in maintaining and safeguarding our rights. In fact, with every fundamental and inalienable right, there attaches a duty and responsibility. And our primary duty and responsibility with our rights is to proactively maintain and safeguard said rights.
Now, before we end the show tonight, Randy, I want to leave our listeners and our audience, our first class passengers, if you will, with a question. Now, the question that we have attached to the show tonight, the opening question is, will terrorism define the 21st century? We talked about terrorism abroad. We talked about, the terrorism as, the people understand it, the common perception of it. Allow me to interject another perception. The terrorism that is being placed and brought to our doorsteps here at home with regard to the infringement upon our rights. The so-called, quote-unquote, suicide bombers that are vying for political office, that have exhibited their tactics in infringing upon our rights. Will terrorism define the 21st century? Well, come November, we're going to find out. Because we're going to find out if we truly have an individual that is hell-bent on instituting terrorism against our constitutional rights. Or if we're going to have an individual that is going to prevent that from happening. See, folks, terrorism isn't just as the common perception that the world has it. Terrorism, any act against anybody's rights, their unalienable God-given rights, any act against that violates it is, in fact, an act of terrorism. When you put a person in position to where they have to utilize their rights or act upon their rights in order to defend themselves, or if they're put into a position where they can't defend themselves, there is a sense of terror that befalls them.
It's also terrorism when Obama sits there and labels our veterans as terrorists. It is a form of terrorism to say that those of us that wish to preserve and adhere to the Constitution are terrorists. That is showing a absolute hatred of the American people and what we stand for, and we will not tolerate that. Obama can try and say that as much as he wants to, but it is not going to make it right. In fact, it is still wrong. It will always be wrong because it goes against the very nature of what it is to be an American. Again, folks, this is why we implore all of us to work into having a fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared Constitution and thereby our fundamental and unalienable rights, because that is the quintessential part of being an American. It allows us to understand where we need to go from here. It gives us the tools that are necessary to discern and look at which politicians best represent this nation and which politicians stand against everything that we advocate for. And just look at Donald Trump. The fact that he is unable to form a coherent political position, much less a coherent sentence, he is not the right guy for the job. There's no other way to describe that. He is not equipped to handle this. I think that he would cave and collapse under the pressure. And that is not something we can afford to allow happen to us, particularly when you consider all that has happened under these two disastrous terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime. Obama has done everything in his power to fundamentally transform the nation. Remember in 2008 that he said we were 5 minutes away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. We now know for certain what he meant when he said that. Now, some of us understood even back then, particularly our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward. He had a perfect understanding of that. He has a line of clarity with respect to most of these political issues. And it is important that we wake up to this reality. And again, that is where the fluent and working knowledge of the Constitution comes in, because it allows us to have that necessary insight to then make the educated decisions that we need to make, sometimes on the fly.
You know, and again, I want to tie this all the way back in. You want to prevent terrorism on the global scale, in the world's perception of it. Again, easiest way to do that, you hit them hard, you hit it where it hurts, and you don't show any remorse for it. That you do that, but you have to do it in such a way to where it does not infringe upon the rights of we the people. You can't do it that way. And if you want to combat terrorism in the deeper sense of the terrorist activities that are being taken against our rights, you have to have a fluent working and understanding knowledge of our shared Constitution. That is the defense mechanism. It's an offensive mechanism, and it's a defensive mechanism. When those two things work hand in hand, it's unstoppable. You want to talk about winning? That's how you win. That's how you become winners. Not like the quaff wants to be, the unicorn utopian quaff in chief. No. That's not what winning is. Winning is being able to preserve your rights, being able to defend them righteously, and using righteous anger to do so if you must.
And there's a difference between righteous anger and blind rage. Blind rage will destroy a nation because it means that you will act out impulsively. You won't think your actions through. Look at Donaldus. Does he think his actions through? I can tell you right now that he does not. He doesn't think his actions through because he doesn't think 2 steps ahead of where he is now. And that's why he says that when we are in this post-Cold War, Cold War world, that we no longer need chess players, we need deal makers. No, we need chess players. We need somebody who can anticipate the strategies of our enemies that have become more hidden, more covert, and more dangerous than they've ever been. We have to be able to take any and all necessary steps to defend our national interests, but we also have to be able to do it without sacrificing our constitutional liberties and rights. That is not something that is up for negotiation. It is, once again, why I say that I must take issue when Donald Trump says everything is up for negotiation. That is too much of a simplistic position. It is a position that we cannot assume because it is a position that will harm us in the long run. Stop and think about what it is that is the natural relationship between the people and their government. It's defined by our Constitution. Again, folks, this is why we say that the Constitution is the key. The Constitution holds all of the answers to every problem that currently faces the country. We have to be willing to take the necessary steps to ensure that the Constitution is adhered to. Because if we fail to do that, then these charlatans, these agent provocateurs of tyranny, despotism, and oppression will work to crush us. They will not stop. They will not back down. They are relentless and tireless in their devotion. Look at how long the Fabian socialists have been working to destroy Western civilization. They've been working at this since the 19th century. That is what makes them so dangerous. That is why they pose the significant threat that they do, and that is why they want to destroy us. Just look at Bernie Sanders when he comes out and defines himself as a so-called democratic socialist. Folks, there is no such thing as a democratic socialist. A socialist is a socialist is a socialist. They all work towards the same goal. They all work to achieve the same thing. They all work against the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty, we the people. That has been their goal ever since socialism became a mainstream ideology, going back to the revolutionary year of 1848. When revolution spread all throughout Western Europe. It was based off of that ideology. But we're seeing a repeat of that because of the way that Alexander de Tocqueville said that socialism is a form of New Age feudalism, because they want to micromanage the facets of our day-to-day lives. This is why we bring this information to you. We bring it to warn you, and we bring it to prepare you to stand up for your rights and liberties. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton. We would like to take this opportunity to personally thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns that you might have, either here at our YouTube page or on our Facebook page or our Google Plus page. We also invite you to follow us at Twitter under the Twitter handle of @RadioAviationEX. That's one word, folks, @RadioAviationEX. And there you'll find our departure board that lists our personal accounts as well as our Cafe Press account. Go ahead and look at some of the trinkets and goodies that we have there, folks, and go ahead and become a first-class passenger. Show off your Wright Flyer pride. Say that 5 times fast. And, you know, help us continue doing this show that we do for you. Once again, folks, thank you very much for joining us. We will see you next time. Do take care.